have a story about a dating game and a red thread. I didn't date for 8 years after I was divorced for the second time. I called it quits on dating. I called it quits on a relationship. I was done. My life was for myself and my kid and my work and my friends and family and my art and going out to eat. We lived on Gold and we would go out to eat at Parlor like every night because I don't cook. I don't cook because I don't allow myself to turn anything on in the kitchen that could potentially burn the house down. Because I've almost burned the house down boiling hot dogs. I just walk out the door to hang out with my friends and forget about anything like the stove is on. So anyway, we would go out to eat every night, basically. And I didn't date, and so the bartender would be like, "Hey, I know this guy. He's really sweet. You'd like him?" And I'm like, "No, I'm all set. I'm good. I'm not dating anymore." And this is years go on, right? And so I'm happy. I have my life. I have my books. I have my kid, and we would come here to watch improv every Friday night for years. That was like my big thing to go out and do. And
clients?
Oh yeah, so my clients would say to me, "Why don't you date, Liz?" And I would say, "No, my guy doesn't exist. He doesn't exist. Like every relationship I'm in turns into a complete nightmare." And so I have a theory. Well, it's not actually my theory. It's a red thread theory, and it's from the East. And it says that there's a string that's tied to your pinky finger or your pinky toe, and it's tied to your soulmate's pinky finger or pinky toe. And it can be twisted and tied up, but it can never be cut. And my red thread guy died at a young age, and so he doesn't exist. And so I'm destined to like be in these terrible relationships forever because my guy's gone. He doesn't exist. And so I was thinking about being a monk, and my clients were like, "What is wrong with you?" And I'm like, "What? I haven't had a date in 8 years, and I'm done. I feel done. I'm good. I feel good. I'm happy." And they're like, "Okay, this is no, that just can't even be real." So I'm.
What was your plan?
Oh yeah, my plan. I'm needing a little help today. I'm a little nervous. So I was like, so at this time, right? So my clients, like, people are like coming at me, like, you really need to date. I'm like, I need to plan to get out of this. And then it was like magic. I heard this TED Talk by, it was called Mathematics of Love. And she's like, so you take the age that you started dating, and then they take the age that you are now, and whatever numbers in between that, you times that by this. I'm like, okay, how many guys am I gonna have to go out with there to like find this guy that I could even spend 10 minutes with, right? And so it was like 20 guys, and I'm like, oh, I can't even. I need a plan. And so I call up my friend Elena, and I was like, listen, I need a plan. If I'm gonna go out with any guys, like, we need to figure out how to fire them quickly, because I don't really even want to do this, so I need to make it fun. And she's like, all right, so we come up with this plan. We have categories of personality traits: must have, can't stand, deal breaker, deal maker, non-negotiable, negotiable, red flag, green flag, and needs. And so I have a column of like 20 items under each thing of like how to fire a guy. So, and then I'm like, all right, well, we need to like come up with a date. So what are we gonna do? So she's like, all right, well, first date, you go out to eat, see how that goes, because I don't cook, right? So I need to like figure out if he can like order food for me. And so, because I'm not a foodie, right? So I need like a foodie in my life. And so the first date is going out to eat, all right? So if he makes it by that, second date is you go to like a museum or something that you have in common, see how he does. Third date, friend group meets him out, right? So anybody in the friend group can fire him. And so that's good, right? Because you need like safeguards. And if he makes it through that, then it's a double date. So then you go on a double date, and the double date, they can fire him. So then the fifth date is like a fundraiser or something like that, see how he does, like sort of like dressed up and proper. And if he makes it through that, and then you get the sixth date, right? Because the whole game is 6 dates to rejection. And I'm like, well, what's the sixth date? What can the sixth date be? I don't know. And so we couldn't kind of figure it out. So the following week, I'm at Parlor. I'm a little bit later that night. I'm there at like 7:30 instead of 5. And I'm with my favorite neighbor, Jack, and my good friend, Deirdre. And so we're sitting at my booth, and in walks Brad. And so Jack's like, hey, Brad, how's it going? He comes over to my booth number 2, Lizzie's booth. I'm working on a plaque. And so we're sitting there at my booth, and they had to leave for some reason, I don't know. So now I'm like with Brad, right? And I'm like working on my game. And he's like, well, what's this game? What are you doing? Do you need help? And I was like, yes, I need help, because I always say yes to help, food, and money. I was like, yes, I would like some help. And so he sits down and he's helping me with my game, and he goes, well, what's the game? I go, well, it's a dating game. I'm like supposed to be dating right now. I haven't had a date in 8 years. I really don't want to date. And he goes, okay, well, what are the dates? And I go, yeah, I have 5 dates. I need a 6th date. I tell him the 5 dates, and he's like, well, it seems like the last date needs to be that you cook a meal for him at your house. I'm like, oh, that's not gonna happen. I don't cook. And so he goes, all right, well then he needs to cook you a meal at his house, because you need to find out if he can cook, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, you're pretty clever. So he leaves. I think that's it, right? The next weekend, I see him at Malt. The next weekend, I see him at Fifth Element. I just keep seeing him around town every weekend. I'm like, okay. So the following weekend after that, I was at a fundraiser, a Quitnick Land Trust fundraiser, and they had a tarot booth that night. And so I was like, oh, okay, I'll do that. I didn't really know anything about tarot at the time. And so I do my cards, and she flips them over, and she goes, oh, I see you're getting married. I'm like, married? I haven't been on a date in 8 years. What are you talking about? And she goes, oh, no, you just recently met him. I'm like, I haven't met anybody. And she goes, yeah, he's really smart. He's a lot like your father. He's an intellectual. And I'm like, Brad? And she goes, yes, Brad. I'm like, that's weird. So the next weekend, I'm walking down Broadway again, and we're in front of Norrie's. And who do we bump into? Brad. I go, can I see your phone? Because apparently I'm supposed to know you or something. So can I put my number in your phone? He's like, okay. So I put my number in his phone, and he walks away. And under my non-negotiable is that he must call or text within 12 hours. Otherwise, he's fired. An hour later, he's like, hey, great to see you tonight. I'm like, uh-oh. And so it goes on like this. And then what happened?
Jenny reminded you?
What?
Jenny reminded you? You had met?
Oh, right. So, no, what happened was,
You were there.
Jesse's mad at me, that's fine. So, I get tickets to a comedy show, and I bump into him again. I'm like, okay, listen, I have tickets to this comedy show. I can give you extra tickets, but we're not gonna sit together, which is against my rules. So we go to the comedy show, and it's over, and we're leaving, and apparently I see him at the end of it, And he's like, if you hadn't said goodnight to me, I would have fired you. I'm like, fired me? I'm the one that fires people around here. What are you talking about? And so we meet up at Parlor like every weekend, all summer long. And he comes over to my house one night before we go to Parlor, and he sees this painting of a cherry tree with a bird on it, and he's like, oh, I lived in Japan for a long time, and I was looking for a painting just like that, and I never found one. And I was like, oh, you can have this one. If it's meant for me, it will find its way back into my life. And I'm like, who are you? What is happening? So I meet him at Parlor over and over again, and I said, you know what, I'm really starting to like you, so if we meet up again, it's gonna have to be a proper date. So we go to the Oyster Bar, and I said to him, listen, I haven't been intimate in 8 years, and it's not gonna be tonight. So if you want to have kids, this is gonna be our first and last date. And I'm not gonna be intimate until you can say I love you. And so I can wait. It's been 8 years. And so I'm like telling all. And he still agreed to like go out with me, which was kind of crazy because, you know, I would have fired me. But anyway, so I meet his parents in September. So we meet like in the spring. And I meet his parents in September. He's still not saying I love you. I'm like, all right, well, so then it's like the middle of October, and I'm like, listen, you know if you love me by now. Like, you just gotta let me go if you don't. And that's fine, we can be friends. Unless, you know, like I'm falling in love with you, and if you don't feel that same way, well, I don't know if I can really actually be friends, but, you know, like, you know by now. And he was like really quiet, and I said, all right, that's it. Your silence like speaks volumes. You just gotta let me go. In this like really sweet way, he was like, no, I do love you. I love you. And I was like, okay, that was it. That was it, right? So that was in 2015. We moved in together in 2017. We got engaged in 2019. And we'll be married someday. And so, but the crazy thing was that when I moved in, we were like redoing all of our artwork to frame them all in black frames. And he had this painting that he had forgotten about. It was like rolled up that he got in Japan. And so we unroll it, and it's this Asian kid playing cat's cradle with a red thread. And it's hanging in our hallway upstairs now. So it's just like crazy, right? And yeah, it's just, I thought my red thread guy didn't exist, but I'm really, really lucky. He does exist. I love you.